Smooth 98.1. Here we are gone past, in fact, it is exactly 7:30 on Feel Good Friday. Welcome to Smooth Breakfast. Okay, so for the next half hour, we are going to be discussing all things pertaining to Nigeria and the news that we've got via our dailies. And joining us for that is Cheta. Hello, Cheta.
Hello, good morning. How are you doing?
We're great, thank you.
We're doing okay. Thank you for joining in. My name is Pepple.
I'm Sope Martins.
There are several ways to reach us live in the studio. WhatsApp is one of them, 0809-444-0981. We're streaming live on YouTube. You can catch Cheta live on YouTube, Smooth 981 FM Lagos. And you send us tweets at Smooth 981 FM. Of course, Cheta is CHXTA. He's already put out a tweet about the show. Get on, retweet it, share it as widely as possible.
Yes, do just that. So you know the different platforms that you can join the conversation with on WhatsApp, on Twitter, and via YouTube as well.
Let's get straight into it. Premium Times this morning. Atiku dispatches 3-member delegation to Port Harcourt for meeting with Wike. Now, a 3-member delegation dispatched by the People's Democratic Party presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar arrived Port Harcourt yesterday evening for a meeting today with the Rivers State Governor and his allies in the crisis rocking the opposition party. Cheta, what's your reaction to this?
I really don't have a reaction to it. The only thing is I'm wondering why it's a story in the first place. What is happening is that Wike's toys are making a parabolic arc out of the pram, and everybody's indulging him. I think it's clear to me that Wike is likely to, at the very best, be indifferent towards the PDP candidates in the next general election. So, where Atiku, I'll be making my plans to do my whole election campaign without him. I mean, he's not given the Byzantine nature of Nigerian politics anyway. When you consider that he's not going to be governor after the next election cycle, and he's not going to be in any position whatsoever, even his own people are going to be subtly distancing themselves from him. So why everybody is running around to make him seem like some beautiful bride that brings something to the table? It's just something that I find very, very ridiculous, but speaks to the nature of our politics, because what is happening is that the only thing they're thinking of is the money direct from Rivers Treasury that he can bring to bear. They're not thinking of any other thing. And so it speaks to the nature of the kind of politics that we run in this country, unfortunately.
All right, that said, let's keep it going. To the vanguard we go. Federal government.
Victor, one thing to add. I find it interesting if you look inside the story. Atiku had sent a delegation earlier and to explore grounds for reconciliation between the two of them. And that delegation is scheduled to be on Monday that just passed. That meeting did not hold because they couldn't find a venue. They could not find a venue.
They wanted to meet in Abuja, and Wike's camp insisted it had to be in Port Harcourt.
That's the way the Premium Times said was they could not find a venue. So it's very interesting, whether it is Port Harcourt, whether it is in Abuja. Anyway, it's just
okay. So let's look at
it. It just says a lot about what is happening, really.
Let's move a bit away from Atiku and Wike, because this has been ongoing for the past 6 weeks. But let's look at Vanguard newspaper now. Federal government blocks mobile payment, telecoms network access to online loan firms. In fact, the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission (FCCPC) has directed payment systems operators such as Flutterwave, Paystack, Monify, as well as telecommunications companies, including mobile network operators in Nigeria, to stop providing support that enables the operation of illegal digital money lenders, also known as money sharks in Nigeria.
It's I think this unlike last Friday that you could input any feel good stories to knock your producer upside the head. This one is a feel good story in some ways. Organizations such as Soko Lending have caused a lot of misery in Nigeria, and I think kudos must be given to the guerrilla journalist David Hundeyin for breaking the story a few months ago. The Consumer Protection Council was not alive to its responsibility. When you consider that, okay, they've rebranded, it's now Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, but have a Consumer Protection Council. So just 3 days ago, I received a WhatsApp message from a number that I don't have. It was about a childhood friend of mine. His picture, all his details, down to his birthday, his current phone number, his address, everything was just sent. And I can only imagine how many people that thing was sent to. A very embarrassing message. And you know, the only thing I could think of, because I've gotten tired, it's not the first time I'm receiving such a message about somebody on my contact list. And before, I used to reply with very harsh words. And then what typically used to happen is that whoever it was that sent the message would reply me. Some would abuse my father and then block me. Not everybody will respond to them, telling them that what they are doing is illegal. And they have caused a lot of distress and mental health issues. Some people have committed suicide because of this kind of predatory behavior. So the question is, how do these shark loans work? Somebody is very desperate. And in a country with inflation at 20%, there are a lot of desperate people. Somebody is very desperate. He goes to meet them. They give him a loan at a very high interest rate and a very short time to pay back. Somebody who is begging you for 50,000 naira cannot possibly pay back 80,000 naira in a month's time. It's almost impossible. So it ends up becoming a hamster's wheel. And then they have this thing where they will be spamming your contacts, sending your name all over the place, you know, costing you not just embarrassment, but abject humiliation. And this thing has been happening for years. So it's a great thing that we have that story, and finally some tangible action has been taken in the sense of cutting off their access to the mobile networks. But it should not just stop there. People should be prosecuted. If you go back to Mr. Hunde's story, you will find that names were named with evidence. Those people should be rounded up and prosecuted and made an example so that this thing will stop.
Well, let's take a look at our next story for today from the Daily Trust. Muslim ticket best option for Nigeria now. We heard from the national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Abdullahi Adamu, who said that this same faith ticket fielded by the party really is the best strategy for APC to win, and apparently the best things that Nigerians need at the moment. Your thoughts on this, Cheta?
I appreciate Abdullahi Adamu's honesty, and I find it's very interesting that it's when they speak to BBC Hausa that some of these people become very honest. Perhaps they think that the rest of us don't understand Hausa, or that somebody will not transcribe it into English and then play it for all of us. I like his honesty, where he said it is the best strategy for the APC to win, because that's what it is in their view. They think it is a strategy to win. All the nonsense that they were saying about it's because of competence and all of that, it's not true. Nigeria is not the same country as it was in 1993, where we had Abiola and Kingibe on the ticket, and everybody, number one, the first thing, because again, I must point out that even then, the religion thing was already an issue in 1993. But the thing that worked in Abiola and Kingibe's favor back then was that everybody was so sick of the Babangida regime that we were willing as a people to overlook the Muslim ticket thing. But our religious vagrancies, especially since in a country of so many different peoples, we are attempting to run a heavily centralized thing. There will always be rivalries. Until we reduce the power of Abuja, we will always have these rivalries, ethnic and religious. So what should have happened really, if the APC were really serious about Nigeria's unity as a country, is they should have founded Northern Christian. You cannot tell me that there are no competent Northern Christians. It's a lie. Adamu has been honest. In their heads, it's a strategy because they believe that, oh, there's a huge block of Northern Muslims who will line up behind the APC simply because they want to see a Muslim in ASUU Rock. Either way it happens. That's what is happening. And enough of the lies. Be honest about it. Let us know so that those of us who are Christians will know that we won't vote for you.
Now, I just want you to touch on this idea of this theory that keeps getting bandied about the Islamization of the country, especially when we see, issues of Muslim tickets.
So the honest truth is that there's no tangible evidence for Islamization. However, having said that, in a country where I stressed earlier, we have these differences and then over-centralization, we will always have these tensions. It's just it. There will always be fear of domination, especially because Nigerian politicians are very indisciplined in their rhetoric. They don't know how to think of, say, Buhari as an example. He won an election. I'm an Igbo guy. Most Igbo people did not vote for him in 2015. I voted for him in 2015, much to my embarrassment now, 7 years later, but that's another matter entirely. He came into power and promptly divided us into those that voted for me and those that didn't vote for me. You cannot do that. Mature, disciplined rhetoric means that after an election, you bring everybody together and say, okay, we had our differences during the campaign, but now I have won. I want all of us to come under the tent. Nigerian politicians don't do that. Instead, they try to oppress. So everybody has a fear of being dominated by the other. And those fears of being dominated will be expressed in rhetoric such as Islamization.
All right, now there are a couple of stories that I want to join together, and the first one comes in from the Punch newspaper. Debt servicing gulps 13.17 trillion naira under Buhari, and education suffers. And going through the story, we find out that this sum refers to like the 6 years between 2016 and 2022, and that the budget in this same period, the government budgeted 4.4 trillion naira for education, despite the constant criticisms from stakeholders such as the Academic Staff Union of universities about the low funding of the sector. So considering the ASUU strike that is still ongoing, and I'll just add the second story into this, where from the Punch newspaper, strike, no arrears, no resumption, ASUU dares federal government. Now bringing it back to this idea of debt servicing and also budgetary allocations for the education sector. So in the years of this current administration, the highest allocation was back in 2017, when a total percentage of 7.38% was allocated to education. And considering the fact that we've got 2022 budgetary allocation of 5.39%, how do you, what do you think about the federal government's plea to ASUU to just let things, go back to work and allow budgetary allocations for 2023 to deal with their fears and concerns?
Please. So let's start with one thing that's not in the stories, but was touched on. Every year since Buhari came to power, the allocation to education has reduced. It speaks to the seriousness with which this particular government places on education. Perhaps I should add the very last story as well, which is from The Guardian. Nationwide blackouts, 3 billion lost as TCN strike. As grid crashes.
We'll get to that when we get to that.
Okay. The reason I wanted to add that is you see the seriousness with which the government responded to the TCN matter, and then the levity with which they are treating ASUU. It tells you where the priorities lie, but conversely, it also tells you where our own priorities as a people lie. Because ASUU is not politically explosive. It's not political suicide for the government. That's why the government can treat it the way they are treated. Most Nigerians are against ASUU. That's just the facts. TCN, on the other hand, is political suicide. So the government ran to treat it. Now, let us talk about these debts, because remember that since 2017, I have sat on this chair and shouted about Nigeria's unsustainable debt. And then by 2019, I started shouting that Nigeria is bankrupt. And people were telling me,
Just don't you feel like Cassandra? constantly
I,
predicting the
I
future
feel
and
like
nobody believing them.
Cassandra. I feel like Cassandra. I also feel a bit of Schadenfreude. But then at the end of the day, I live here. So it's going to affect me as well. So between 1985 and 2000, which were years of unbridled military plutocracy and a 15-year period, Nigeria increased its debt stock by 4%, four times over. That 15-year period included Babangida and Abacha. In the 6 years between 2015 and 2021, Buhari has increased Nigeria's debt stock by 3 times.
It was 67%, right? If I remember the numbers that were coming up.
By 3 times, he has increased our debt stock. It is 3 times what he met it. Now our debt service, remember that as on a show during the pandemic, I don't remember which exact month, but it was in 2020, I shouted that our debt service to revenue ratio was now 97% at the time. Now our debt service to revenue ratio is 119%. What that means is that every naira that Nigeria earns, we are spending 1 naira 19 kobo paying basic. Essentially, that's your drunk uncle that when he's coming to the party, your mother locks the door and hides everything because he will take something and leave the house and you will never see it again. That's what we have become.
Oh, Nigeria, the drunk uncle. Okay.
Unfortunately, the things that saved us earlier, back in 2003, when the Paris Club forgave our debts and all of that stuff, it's not available to us. The only way out of this morass now is for us to go to what they call the lender of last resort, which is the IMF. And the IMF...
Oh, that just brings a shiver down the spine whenever you see countries going to the IMF.
Before the IMF will give us any money that is not due us. You see, there's a difference between IMF giving us money that is due us, because every country contributes to the IMF. So when you have an emergency, and a lot of countries, including Nigeria, activated that during COVID, you meet the IMF, and some of those your contributions are released to you. Remember, some $4.3 billion or something that the IMF released to us, and people shouted, "Oh, we're going to the IMF." No, that was money that we have contributed to the IMF. But for IMF to now give you an actual IMF loan, it comes with some kind of stringent conditions that include laying off of a lot of people, that includes restructuring of your finances, a lot of the things that we have been running from for a long time. We go do them. And it is going to be painful. It is going to be painful. But my people, that day is coming. It is unavoidable now.
Now, I'd like to take things to what you have to say, to the messages coming in. Remember, you can send WhatsApp messages.
I haven't talked about ASUU.
Yes. Before we talk about ASUU, let's get some of
But you combine the two stories now.
I know.
We'll come back to
time. We'll get back to ASUU in just a second. Let me take some of the messages. So Dami from Ikeja says, when Atiku denied his condemnation of Deborah Samuel's lynching, he went to his House of Facebook profile to do it. When Tinubu declared Emilokon, it was in Yoruba. One message for people, another. It was another for the rest of us. Our political class is the biggest threat to our unity. More messages coming in. This one from Austin.
It says some northern governors destroyed primary education. Very soon, all the states in the north.
But we've not finished the ASUU story now.
This is how Boko Haram started in one state and spread all over the north. How else do you want the north to tell you that they like development, so that the northern politicians will keep deceiving them? Austin from Satellite. I see what you said earlier in the week with the north.
Yes.
And Austin.
Northern agenda against. Cisco Delgado says, ASUU and TCN are government responsibilities, but because a lot of our leaders are shareholders of TCN dividends, they have to do everything in their power to ensure it doesn't stop. And that brings us back to ASUU and your thoughts.
So I think that, here's the thing. In broad terms, I support ASUU. But I think, and because the story said that they will not call off the strike until they are paid arrears for the period that they were on strike. And for me, that's them taking the piece. Why should they be paid for a choice that they made that has kept students at home for half a year? I grant that there's an agreement that the FG has failed to honor, and those areas under that agreement should be paid. But in my view, any strike that goes beyond warnings and up to a total shutdown, which makes students suffer needlessly, should be treated as people who are unwilling to work, and they should be paid for that period. So in my view, the areas should be paid, but the 6 months where they no go work, may they no pay them. That's just my view.
Now, they've said we're not going to go back to the classrooms except we're paid. This might linger for a year up until the elections next year, Cheta.
Like I said, ASUU is not so one thing that people, and I've said this before, during the last major strike, I think that was in 2018, I sat on this chair and said, my disappointment with ASUU is that they are supposed to be the best of us. They're supposed to be the most brilliant guys in the country. After all, they're university academics, and they can't think of an alternative solution. I mean, come on. This going on strike without end has clearly not worked. It's clearly not working, but they keep, I mean, the very definition of insanity is doing
the same thing over expecting different results.
Is doing the same thing over and over and expecting the same results. Think about it this way. How many times ASUU has been on strike? 16 times since 1999. The shortest of those strike periods was 1 week in 2006. The longest of this is now this one, which is 6 months and counting.
No. In 2020,
in 2002,
they went on 9
okay, in 2020,
strike.
They went on a 9-month strike. Yeah, yes. 2020. I remember that now. In 2002, they had 2003, they had a 6-month strike. So this one is now the second longest. When you've been doing this, again, 16 strike periods, when you've been doing this for years and years, and the results are still the same, the government will agree, and then somewhere along the line will not agree again. You need something different. I'm not going to pretend to be smarter than them, but it's clear to me that they need a different tactic to solve this problem, because this endless strike is not working. Instead, it's alienating them from the very population that they're meant to be serving.
Well, Cheta, one tactic that definitely seemed to work was the NUEE strike, and let's see what happens.
Let's get to that story again from the Guardian newspaper. Okay, let's go
to that.
Nationwide blackout, 3 billion naira lost to TCN strike as the grid crashes.
So, in my view, people like Joe Ajero should be arrested, prosecuted, sentenced to death, and shot.
Isn't that extreme?
That's what they did 2 days ago, was economic sabotage. I saw that video of some animal going into the
language Cheta.
Human being, thank you.
I had something worse in my head, so I'm being nice.
Something better.
I saw that video of that specimen going into the substation to turn off the lights. That is economic sabotage. And it speaks to the failure of the Nigerian states that as he was doing that, we didn't have the police or even the army coming to pick him up. Let's be clear. You have every right to go on strike. It is your right. It is your right as a labor, whatever. But to deliberately sabotage the economy, you have no right to do that. What you do, a strike by its very definition, is to down tools and walk out. That is what ASUU have done. What TCN did was the opposite of a strike. They went in and they sabotaged the economy.
But
and they should answer questions for that.
It worked, didn't it? Considering the fact that we're seeing ASUU legitimately downing tools.
Even if TCN had just walked out, even if TCN, so what we need to understand is that TCN has a political cost. So if they had simply walked out, the government would have still done something.
Government did not do anything. They had a 2 weeks notice before that.
They had because the government never takes any strike notice seriously. That's our history. Even when police said they were going on strike, the government didn't say anything until they actually went on strike.
Police?
The government does the Nigerian government is a bad faith actor. That's the fact.
So what do
but
you
sabotaging the economy for
factor?
every other person.
Mm.
That is, I mean, economic sabotage is a crime anywhere. And it's, again, I will keep circling back to this point. It speaks to the failure of the Nigerian state, because in other countries, the military is actually has the expertise to keep the country running. So if, for example, it was in, let's take random country, Egypt, that this has happened, the Egyptian military has the capacity to operate all the power stations in the country.
Our military is quite busy doing other things.
I mean,
yeah, I forgot.
They're rather
13, 36
overstretched.
states,
They don't want to give
overstretched,
them
really.
But the Nigerian
transmission
Army Corps of
issues as well.
Engineers, the Nigerian Army Corps of Engineers should be able to multitask.
The big issue here will be 2 weeks from now, they resume, because they only suspended that action for 2 weeks.
They should arrest all of them.
All right, now messages still coming in. David Bazimo says, based on Nigeria's excess crude account balance of $376,000, as a country, Nigeria cannot afford a house in the UK or USA, where many individual politicians own their own homes. And he also says, can I describe the actions of Nigeria's political class as economic sabotage?
Yes.
Back to the messages on WhatsApp. Daniel Okoye is saying, meetings upon meetings between Atiku and Wike. If I were Atiku, I would sideline Wike and do my campaign. With or without him, Atiku will still, okay. So Wike's one vote would not make Atiku to win. Okoye from Ajay, I see that message.
Nero Cello says, ASUU is not fighting just for their pay as claimed by the government, but they want a better functioning system for our education.
Please,
as well.
let's not, if they wanted a better functional education, they will agree to the IP step.
Let me continue with Nero's message. Nero goes on to say, our leaders don't value good education and they act like a well-educated citizen is a threat to them. Education
but he is
the only thing that should be subsidized because it's key to our growth as a nation.
This is asking, now Sope and Victor said it was right to switch off the power grid because that is the only way government will respond to their demands. What they did was unacceptable and they should be locked up.
No, we don't say anything.
We've not said that. I mean, if you even listened to Lagos Talks yesterday, we talked about this. Yes, we're not on their side, really.
Sir Ken says, in truth, that video of TCN turning off power felt like a terror act. I was actually cringed.
It was terrorism.
All right, and we'll take this one in. Fabian from Macbeth says, I'm sorry, but I think in a way it pays ASUU if they go on strike, as they can freely then work elsewhere during the period. Unfortunately, the government only seems to respond to strikes. A stronger NLC support would have helped ASUU's plight.
Well, the NLC went on a 2-day solidarity strike, but it didn't change anything at all. Okay, we'll take this one. I said it yesterday that the government care less about ASUU, probably because they are not directly affected by it, unlike the power sector. The reason why the strike had not worked, sir, is because students have not held the government, okay,
like
just
I
like
said,
NSTARS,
there's
with
no
all the money
cost
being
to
recovered and some given to our neighbors, you want them to call it off? No, sir. James Ogbonna from Oshodi sent that across.
Whilst Yomi says you don't go on strike and leave power stations unmanned.
That's actually what they do. And then, because basically you go on strike, leave the station unmanned, at some point something will spoil. And then when that something spoils, you are not there to repair it. And that's when your strike begins to kick in. It's called patience.
Goodness. Let me just read this one in from JK, who says, please, dear team, please, does anyone have a solution that will work for ASUU, because the university direly needs funding? My 19-year-old girl is in the 400 level computer science at Unilag, and she learned coding privately. In their last session, their school exams for programming were done via pencil and paper. The school has no laptops. I was so sad when she told me this.
See, to be honest, I think a solution, and it's a solution many Nigerians would not want to hear, but it's something we need to look at. When I was in Uniben back in the late 1990s, that was when the first set of private universities were opening, and we used to look down on private university students. But 25 years down the line, and you can see that the market has made its choice. There's nobody who will deny that students coming out of Babcock, Covenant, Madonna University are actually much better than students coming out of federal universities. The federal government needs to remove its hands from most of the universities, concentrate on just the 6 so-called first generation universities, and then leave the rest to be privately run while the 6 serve as a model. And then the government should focus mainly on basic education, because that's where the real damage is being done. We keep talking about university education, university education. The materials that gets to the universities are already damaged in the first place.
But we have UBEC, Universal Basic Education Commission. Anyways, let's keep it going. Emeka from Amowo says, what the TCN did is like doctors going on strike and turning off the life support of patients.
Exactly.
What a shame.
Emeka, thank you.
Oh, that's actually okay. That's a metaphor I can see. All right, Izeodu from Lekki says the very worst of IBB during his days as military president is still far better than what we have right now. Buhari both as military head of state or civilian presidents. I recall that in the 90s when Kalu Idika Kalu was finance minister in the IBB regime, the nation was put through a national debate on whether we should take 2 billion naira IMF loan or not. These days, we don't have such choices. And we will end the show on that message because we have come to the end. Your messages keep on coming. However, what you can do is direct the flow of the conversation on to Twitter. You can find Cheta at Chickster. He'll be tweeting, I'm sure, about this and so much more. And Cheta, thank you so much for joining us for this half hour and taking us through your thoughts and opinions on these stories.
Thank you.